Today we are taking a look at the final portion of the Gospel of Judas as we see that Jesus reveals that Judas will become Lord of the universe. And we're also going to look into the final betrayal operated by Judas and unlock the secrets of the Gospel of Judas. Now this, as I said, this is the final part of the Gospel of Judas. And if you want to see all the other sections and parts, the playlist for my videos on that will be in the description of this video. So make sure you check them out. But even if you haven't seen those, you don't need to have seen them to be able to understand this video. So this is going to be a really good one. I've been looking forward to talking about this all week. It's a very interesting topic. I also want to remind you all that my lecture notes and live stream notes for this video and many of my other videos will be available to those who support on Patreon. As well as Patreon supporters will get access to our hidden Discord server, the Citadel, and weekly live streams as well. So consider supporting on Patreon. But let's get started. So where we last left off, Jesus and Judas were having this confrontation where Jesus reveals to Judas the mysteries of the universe, the true reality, the true God, all these different things. And if you remember, Jesus says that he is telling this to Judas, not because he's going to go there or see these things, but so that he will suffer much in realizing that he won't ever go there or see these things, that he will always be barred from that reality. And there are some people who interpret the Gospel of Judas as Judas being a hero, that Jesus and Judas are sort of conspiring together for Judas to betray Jesus, that it was all part of, Jesus's plan, and Jesus wants Judas to betray him, and that through Judas's betrayal, Jesus will be able to leave his body and go to this eternal realm and all that. But to me, this is clearly not true. Jesus is telling Judas that he is telling him these things so that he will grieve and suffer, that he'll never see this true reality. And there are these continuous references to this evil nature of Judas that we will continue to see. So once again, it is my position and interpretation of the Gospel of Judas that Judas is either an avatar for the evil creator god, Beelzebub, or even Sacculus, or that Judas will be promoted to the position of Lord of the universe later. So either Judas already is an avatar for the Lord of the universe, the evil creator god, or he will be promoted to that position. And we're going to see why and how and what that actually means, because there's a hidden meaning and a hidden message to all this. Because remember, all these banned gospels, all these Gnostic gospels are revealing secret information. They say that outright at the beginning of a lot of these gospels. This is secret information. This is hidden information. So a lot of this, well, most of this is allegorical. Most of this is in terms of symbolism. And we're going to unpack this and see what this means. But let's jump into this and pick up where we left off. So Judas said to Jesus, "Does the human spirit die?" And Jesus said, "This is how it is. God commanded Michael to loan spirits to people so that they might serve. Then the Great One commanded Gabriel to give spirits to the great generation with no king, the spirit along with the soul. So the rest of the souls blank light, blank the chaos, blank seek the spirit within you, which you've made to live in the flesh from the angelic generations. Then God caused knowledge to be brought to Adam and those with him, so that the kings of chaos and Hades might not rule over them." So let's unpack this passage and see what it means. And remember, for those who might be watching this for the first time, the Gospel of Judas is an extremely old text and took a lot of damage because it was in a safety deposit box for 16 years. If you want to know the whole history of that, it's crazy. So that's in the playlist that will be linked in the description of this video if you want to check that out. But anyway, it took a lot of damage, so there are pieces missing. So whenever I say blank, that means there was a piece missing in the codex and we don't know what it said. So that's why I'm saying blank. But anyway, let's unpack this. So So we have here, this is the Great One commanded Gabriel to give spirits to the generation with no king, the spirit along with the soul. So what is the great generation with no king? We know right away that this is referring to the Apocalypse of Adam, which is another banned, heretical Gnostic text. And in the Apocalypse of Adam, Adam reveals that the creator God is actually evil, the devil, and that he trapped souls onto earth, that Adam and Eve used to be one being, but he split them into two to try and thwart them from realizing their divinity, and etc. I did videos on that if you want to check it out as well on my channel. Now, so the reference to the generation with no king is because we realize that in the Apocalypse of Adam, there is this being called the Illuminator who comes to basically help humanity realize that they're divine. And there are these different kingdoms who try and say who the Illuminator is, and they keep getting it wrong. 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 And this is more than likely a reference to religions who will interpret the Messiah figure as something incorrect, like, oh, he was born of a virgin, or oh, we must worship him, or whatever. They're going to get it wrong. But only one kingdom gets it right, and that's the generation with no king. Only the generation with no king realizes who the Illuminator actually is, as this being who is here to help them understand their own divinity. And so this is another clear indication that this is a Sethian text, because the Apocalypse of Adam is a Sethian text. Now, it's very interesting to understand this idea of why is it only the kingdom, or why is it only the ones with the generation with no king that gets it right. And most likely, this is a reference to the fact that they don't serve, right? If you are, what do you do if you are in a kingdom where a king rules? You serve the king. You are subservient to the king. So the generation with no king indicates that they do not serve a ruler. Well, who is the chief ruler? Who is the chief archon? The evil creator god, the god of the Bible, in Gnosticism known as Yaldabaoth, or Saklas, or Nibro, or Ariel, or what's the other one? Samael, I believe. Something like that. Many different names. But anyway, it's the indication that they will not serve a ruler. And this is why that they are the generation that will realize their own divinity. So that's the reference there, which is really cool to see all these different references, cross-references to different Gnostic texts. And then it continues to say, then God caused knowledge to be brought to Adam. So, and in this, when Jesus is saying God brought knowledge to Adam, Jesus is not referring to the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible is an evil being, like I just said, known as Yaldabaoth or Saklas. So when Jesus is saying God, he's referring to the One, the great invisible spirit, or the monad, all different names for this one being. And according to Gnosticism, every single one of us is a fragmented piece of that one divine being that has been trapped in the world of matter, and now it's our job to realize our divinity, according to Gnosticism. Which is, if you don't know, Gnosticism is this version of Christianity. There were many different versions of Christianity. You see, today, I mean, there's still many different versions of Christianity, but it all revolves around typically the same beliefs. The divinity of Jesus, etc., etc. When Christianity was first beginning, that's not true at all. There were many, 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 many groups of Christians. Many groups of Christians that had a radical different interpretation of Christianity. And they still believed in Jesus, but they believed that Jesus was a messenger sent to them to realize their own divinity, and that the God of the Bible, the Old Testament, was an evil being. Anyway, so it says, then God, as in the One, the great invisible spirit, the monad, caused knowledge to be brought to Adam and those with him, so that the kings of chaos and Hades might not rule over them. And you see again this reference to the kings of chaos and Hades. What are the kings of chaos and Hades? That's Yaldabaoth, the evil creator god, and all his archons, his evil demons and rulers, who in the Bible would be angels. You see, everything is different in Gnosticism. So in Gnosticism, you have eons and archons, and eons are truly divine beings from the realm of divine light, the one, and then archons are the evil rulers, servants of the evil creator god. So again, you see that God, the true God, the one God, which we all are, caused knowledge to be brought to Adam and those with him, so that the kings of chaos and Hades might not rule over them, the evil creator god. And you see, again, this is why it's the generation with no king that gets things right and will understand its own divinity, because they don't serve the kings, they don't serve the rulers, they don't serve these evil beings. And so it says, God caused knowledge to be brought to Adam, as in the one. Now, this is a very shortened, abridged version of what is sort of the typical Sethian Gnostic belief. So we see in the Gospel of Judas that a lot of things has been changed around a little bit to make it a lot shorter, and also to make it more appealing to what would become mainstream Christianity. And this was done to try and get across a certain message. It was done for a purpose. But this is a very shortened and abridged version. We see in other Gnostic texts like the Secret Gospel of John and the Apocalypse of Adam, what actually happened was a lot more involved. There wasn't just Adam, and then the one didn't just cause knowledge to be brought to Adam. What happened was that there was a divine entity, that is humanity, that Yaldabaoth trapped in human bodies and then split into two, Adam and Eve. And what this symbolically represented was that in a certain sense, Adam symbolically represented mind, and in a certain sense, Eve represented symbolically what the Gnostics called epinoia, which is purposeful thinking or conceptual thought or even intuition, and what allows for self-reflection and self-understanding. So in essence, what the evil creator God did was that he trapped them into bodies and then split them, meaning he split humanity to keep them from having the ability to have self-reflection and understand their own divinity. He removed conceptual thinking from humanity, essentially, so that they wouldn't realize their own divinity. Now, this is rectified through the reunion of Adam and Eve, symbolically through their son Seth. Symbolically, Adam and Eve reunite and give birth to Seth, and now Seth contains both elements of Adam and Eve, which means mind and conceptual thinking. Therefore, Seth has the ability to have self-reflective thought and realize his own divinity. And because all the descendants of the earth are descendants of Seth, all humanity has this capacity to have self-reflective thought and understand their own divinity. And so that's why these Gnostics are known as Sethians, because to them, Seth, and being Sethian, represents the ability to look within and discover your own divinity, and not being subservient to the ruler, which is the evil creator God of the Bible. So you see that there is, and I get a lot, by the way, when I say the evil creator God of the Bible, I know that there wasn't a Bible back then. I know that. I'm saying this so that people who are familiar with what has become Orthodox Christianity will know what being I'm referring to in an easy way. I don't want to have to retell stories and history every time I bring this up. But you can see here how Gnosticism is very symbolic, and this is going to be important. So as we uncover the secret of the Gospel of Judas and what it means for Judas to become the Lord of the universe, keep these two things in mind. One, that the Gospel of Judas, and Gnosticism in general, is meant to give secret information that is very, very symbolic. Again, Adam and Eve and Seth, this is all symbolic for mind uniting with conceptual thinking and the ability of self-reflection. It's very intelligent philosophy wrapped up in a story. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind that it's highly symbolic, and also look how, and keep in mind how the evil creator god, Yaldabaoth or Saklas, is always trying to thwart humanity from realizing its divinity. These two things are really important to keep in mind for understanding, the final reveal of why Judas becomes the Lord of the universe, etc. So then Judas said to Jesus, "So what will those generations do?" Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, the stars complete all these things. When Saklas completes the time span that's been determined for him, their first star will appear with the generations, and they'll finish what's been said. Then they'll sleep around in my name, murder their children, and they'll blank evil and blank the realms, bringing the generations and presenting them to Saklas. And after that, blank will bring the 12 tribes of Israel from blank, and the generations will all serve Saklas, sinning in my name, and your star will rule over the 13th realm." So previously, in previous videos, we learned that a star represents sort of the eternal self. We understand this through Platonic philosophy, and Jesus says in here. So basically, it's this idea that every human soul has a star assigned to it. And we can understand that symbolically as sort of representing the higher self. The star is the higher self. And that higher self manifests itself through an avatar in physical reality. Sorry, I'm just checking my notes and making sure I'm at the right place here before I continue. Anyway, let's continue here. Oh, I want to mention that, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Jesus said, "Master," and then Jesus laughed. Judas said, "Master, why are you laughing at me?" Jesus answered and said, "I'm not laughing at you, but at the error of the stars, because these 6 stars go astray with these 5 warriors, and they'll all be destroyed along with their creations." And we remember that the six stars, so you have Yaldabaoth and Saklas. Yaldabaoth creates 6 stars, Saklas creates 6 stars, which are the basically like 6 rulers and 6 archons for a total of 12. And then we had the 5 in the beginning, which are 5 rulers of chaos and Hades: Yeoth, Harmathoth, Galilil, Yobel, Adanios. Anyway, that was in the last video that you can watch if you want more information about that. But essentially, Jesus is just talking about how these archons will go astray and end up being destroyed, etc. Then Judas said to Jesus, "What will those do who've been baptized in your name?" Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, this baptism which they've received in my name will destroy the whole generation of the earthly Adam. Tomorrow they'll torture the one who bears me." And it's really interesting. So now when Jesus says tomorrow they'll torture the one who bears me, Jesus is talking about the crucifixion. He's going to be tortured on the cross. But it's very interesting to note where he says they'll torture the one who bears me. You see, Jesus does not associate with the avatar that he currently occupies. Jesus knows that he is a divine emissary from the true realm of light, sent to reveal humanity their true divine nature. And remember, it was Jesus who, according to Gnosticism, it was Jesus who told Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. See, in Gnosticism, Jesus plays the role of Lucifer, where he's eternally trying to get humanity to realize that they are divine and don't have to worship God. Jesus is also an emissary for Sophia. So it's important to know that in the symbols of Sophia, Christ, and Lucifer, they all share this same archetypal pattern, which is this mission to bring light to humanity so that they may realize their own inner divinity. So anyway, Jesus is saying, tomorrow they'll torture the one who bears me, the avatar of Christ, but not actually Christ. Truly I say to you, no hand of a mortal human will fall upon me. So do you see what Jesus, in Hyperionism, we talk about the different perspectives a lot. We have the avatar perspective, the monadic perspective, and the absolute perspective. The avatar perspective is you in a body. The monadic perspective is you as an eternal mind, you as your higher self that is outside space and time and exists within the source. And then the absolute perspective is the collective itself, all of us together, all minds operating together as one mind. In Hyperionism, you should constantly practice between switching through these different perspectives. And so you can see that Jesus is not operating from the avatar perspective here. Jesus is operating from either the monadic or the absolute perspective, either way, because he's saying, truly I say to you, no hand of a mortal human will fall upon me. Because, see, he's not in avatar mode. Christ knows that he's not his avatar. So when he says no mortal man of a human will ever harm me, all you can do is harm my avatar, is basically what he's saying. But I'm not my avatar. So that's what it means when he says no. Because, of course, what do you mean? They're going to crucify him. They're not crucifying Jesus. They're crucifying the avatar of Jesus. So do you see the difference here? And do you see in Hyperionism how we can talk about understanding these three different perspectives can really help you with alleviating the suffering and sting of life? Because when you're trapped in avatar mode, life is hard and you can feel like you're being crucified. But when you switch to monadic mode and realize that you are eternal monadic mind that is not confined to this physical existence, you realize no mortal man of a human can lay their hand on me. Do you see how it helps to you can feel like you're suffering, but when you're able to see from that higher perspective, when you're able to switch, it becomes a lot different. And this is where you can really begin to enjoy life as well. This is something really important. Because imagine that you're playing a video game. Let's talk about Diablo, because Diablo 2 Resurrected just came out. By the way, I played Diablo 2 for the very first time in my life ever. I believe it was last year. Because I wasn't allowed to play that game growing up, because I was raised in a strict Christian household. And I wanted to play that game so bad. It looked so cool, but it was called Diablo. I wasn't allowed to play it. I wanted to so bad. I wasn't allowed to. But I was finally able to last year, just because I was like, you know what, I'm going to play this game. Anyway, it's kind of an aside, but let's take the game, Diablo, for example. Imagine if you thought, it's a lot of fun to play, right? It's a fun game. But imagine if you didn't know it was a game. Imagine that you had the point of view of the character in that game. Oh man, it would be hell, right? Like you're just constantly fighting demons and dragons and you're just fighting and going through this tortuous existence. That would be terrible. But guess what? When you realize that, oh wait, I'm the player, I'm not the game character, it's fun. Do you see? It's all in the perspective. If you think the game is real, you're in hell. If you realize that you're not in the game, not the game character, it's a game and it's fun. So this is the importance of learning to be able to switch between the triadic modes of Hyperion consciousness. Because when you are in life, it can feel like hell sometimes. But when you realize you're not your avatar, and you switch to monadic mode and you realize that you're just controlling, it's fun, it's a game. Oh, it's a game. You see how perspective changes everything. Everything. And this is why people go, oh, well, why should I learn Hyperionism? What does it do for me? What does Hyperionism do for me? Because they haven't, when you step into that new frame of consciousness, everything changes. Your life changes. You see the big difference. You can go from having a hellish experience to enjoying it. Anyway, so Christ is not in avatar mode here. And he's saying, tomorrow they'll torture the one who bears me, my avatar. But I say to you, no hand of a mortal human will fall upon me. Truly I say to you, Judas, those who offer sacrifices to Sackless, and here when they refer to Sackless, they're talking about the evil creator god, the God of the Bible. So truly I say to you, Judas, those who offer sacrifices to Sackless, the evil god, everything that's evil. But you'll do more than all of them, because you'll sacrifice the human who bears me. Again, Christ is not in avatar mode. He's not saying you're gonna sacrifice me. He's saying you're gonna sacrifice the human that bears me. Very important to understand. But also to understand here, again, this is a clear indication to me that Judas is no hero. Some people read the Gospel of Judas and think Judas is a hero. To me, that's clearly not the case. Because look, he's saying, truly, I say to you, Judas, those who offer sacrifices to Sackless, the evil creator god, everything that's evil, but you'll do more than all of them. You're going to do worse because you'll sacrifice the human who bears me. And then it continues, your horn has already been raised. Does that sound like Judas is a hero here? No. Your horn has already been raised. Your anger has been kindled. Your star has ascended, and your heart has strayed. Truly I say to you, your last blank and the thrones of the realm have been defeated. The kings have grown weak, the angelic generations have grieved, and the evil they sowed blank is destroyed, and the ruler is wiped out. And then the fruit of the great generation of Adam will be exalted, because before heaven, earth, and the angels, that generation from the realms exists. So what does Christ mean by the generation of Adam will be exalted? Because the fruit of the great generation of Adam will be exalted. Okay, so the fruit of the great generation of Adam. So again, he's talking indirectly about the Sethians, because from Adam comes Seth, and from Seth comes all humanity, and all humanity has the ability to look inside and realize their divinity. And so what does he mean by the fruit of that generation? Well, the fruit is a plant that has actualized itself. If a plant doesn't produce its fruit, it hasn't fulfilled itself, it hasn't fulfilled its purpose. So the fruit of the generation of Adam is symbolic for the individuals that have actualized themselves and realized their divinity. They have produced fruit. They have fully become what they are. And they will be exalted. So he continues, look, he's talking to Judas, look, you've been told everything. Lift up your eyes and see the cloud with the light in it and the stars around it. And the star that leads the way is your star. Then Judas looked up and saw the luminous cloud, and he entered it. Those standing on the ground heard a voice from the cloud saying, blank, the great generation, blank, and Judas didn't see Jesus anymore. Immediately there was a disturbance among the Jews. More than blank, their high priest grumbled because he'd gone into the guest room to pray. But some scribes were there watching closely so they could arrest him during his prayer, because they were afraid of the people, since they all regarded him as a prophet. And they approached Judas and said, what are you doing here? Aren't you Jesus' disciple? Then he answered them as they wished. Then Judas received some money, and he handed him over to them. And that concludes the Gospel of Judas. But let's unwrap this and see what it means. So I'm going to explain to you the idea here of Judas becoming Lord of the universe and what this means. So I want to tell you that this is my interpretation, but I think that this interpretation should be obvious, because the other interpretation to me is clearly not true. So some people believe that the Gospel of Judas is that Jesus and Judas co-conspired and worked together as a team, and Jesus wanted Judas to betray him, and then ultimately Judas will be rewarded for this by becoming Lord of the material universe, aka the ruler, the star that leads the way. To me, this is clearly not true. Throughout this entire text, Jesus is very antagonistic to Judas. He says, "You 13th daemon," even though that could be interpreted different ways. He says, "Your horn has been raised, your anger has been kindled, your heart has led you astray." Jesus tells Judas he's going to tell him the secrets of the true realm because he will never get there. To me, it's utterly clear that Judas is no hero. So, Judas is either an avatar for the evil creator God, or will become that ruler and Lord later. And let's unpack why this is and how it makes sense in the context of the Gospel of Judas. So, what is the entire point of the Gospel of Judas? The whole point of the Gospel of Judas is that the Gospel of Judas is an attack on what would become mainstream Christianity. So, again, mainstream Christianity hadn't been established yet, but it was beginning to. And that would become, that the belief that Jesus was a savior, that you have to pray to and repent to your sins, and that the God of the Bible was the one true God. So in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus is saying, no, that's false. The 12 disciples worship Satan, the evil creator God, a satanic evil being. And the 12 disciples will go on to preach a false message in my name, that they will twist me in my message, and that they will get humanity to worship the evil creator God and a false version of my teachings. That is the point of the Gospel of Judas. It is an attack on what would become mainstream Christianity by saying it's false, and anyone who believes in it is following a false doctrine, so much so that they might as well be worshiping the devil. So, to understand this idea of Judas becoming Lord of the universe, because remember, throughout the Gospel of Judas, if you've seen the other videos, and if you haven't, you should watch them in the playlist, Judas is different from the other disciples. He's stronger than them. He has more of an understanding than them. And what we'll see is that this is because that Judas has the balls, Judas has the ability, Judas has the I don't like that, by the way. I don't see that. You know what? Forget that I said that Judas had the balls, but because I know that that's kind of funny that I said that, but and I said that to kind of be lighthearted about it. But you know what? That's not a good way to say things. And I always want you to be. It's very careful how you use language. All right, because people also often refer to people as having balls. And I know this is probably like, oh, this is kind of like, why is he even talking about this? But this stuff is important. And I know it's kind of an aside and a digression from the main topic, but I really want to talk about this because the power that language has. And I want you to notice how genderism and sexism is rooted in the language that we use every day, even so much that I slipped up and did it because I wanted to do it for humorous effect, but I realized it has a negative impact. When you say that, people have balls when they do something that requires courage, you're implying that, oh, it is men that have courage. And when you call someone a pussy, when they are doing something that is weak or when they're frightened, you are implying that women are weak and that women are easily frightened and that women are lesser in some capacity. And even though, these have just leaked into our language, and when we say them, we probably don't even mean to be sexist or genderist about it in any way. We probably don't mean that. But we need to be vigilant that we correct our language and we correct the way we speak and that we correct the way we say these things. Because even if we don't explicitly mean it to be harmful, these ideas will seep into the unconscious and can ultimately lead to having a bad view, even if we don't realize it consciously. So we shouldn't say those things like that. And even though I did, I'm correcting that because you see how these ideas can really seep into and sneak into the unconscious. And we have to be very, very careful about the words that we choose to use. That's why I like to refer to humanity as humanity and not man, man and mankind, etc. We have to be careful because, again, people always think, oh, well, you're just being politically correct. It's not about being politically correct or offensive or anything like that. It's because these have our words are powerful and have a real effect on the unconscious. Anyway, that's a huge aside. Let's go back to what we were talking about. Judas had the courage to do what the other disciples couldn't do. And what was that? Hand Jesus over to be killed. So here's the idea. Throughout, the common theme throughout Gnosticism is that the evil creator God is constantly trying to thwart humanity from realizing its own divinity. He traps humanity in matter. When that doesn't work, he splits them in two. When that doesn't work, he sends a flood. He traps them in forgetfulness. He brings death upon them. He is constantly doing things to try and thwart humanity from realizing their own divinity. Then in Gnosticism, you have this figure of Christ, whose teachings are to tell humanity that if they look within, they will find their own divinity. So what happens? According to this, the disciples will twist the words of Jesus Christ and promote a false doctrine. So because the evil creator God has a problem now. The new problem is that you have this figure of Christ going around telling people that they can be divine. So what is the plan that the evil creator God launches? He'll have the 12 disciples twist Christ's message into what would become mainstream Christianity to get them to worship the evil creator God again and never realize its own divinity. So they'll never realize their own divinity. But there's one thing stopping that from happening, and that's Jesus Christ. So what does Judas do? Judas has the ability and the strength to do what the other disciples couldn't, and that is by ending and killing Christ through betraying him. Not Christ himself, but the avatar of Christ. So what does that have? Now, why is this important? Because now that Christ is out of the picture, the disciples now have free reign to go preaching a false and twisted message of Christ and give birth to, through apostolic succession, give birth to what would become mainstream Christianity, because mainstream Christianity will be founded on the testimony of the disciples of Christ. So, symbolically, Judas leading the way and becoming the ruler is the fact that Judas eliminated Christ and made way for the taking over of mainstream Christianity. In other words, Judas was sort of the spark that lit the flame that would engulf the earth in a very negative way with the rule of this twisted version of Christianity that would get people to deny their own divinity and worship the evil creator God of the Bible. So this is the veiled message of the Gospel of Judas. The entire message of the Gospel of Judas is that mainstream Christianity is a false doctrine promulgated by those who worship an evil creator God, Satan, and will spread a false message in Christ's name to get humanity to give away their divinity and deny their own divinity and worship the evil creator God. And how did this get all kicked off? By Judas. Judas led the way by eliminating the avatar of Christ and allowing the proliferation of a false and twisted message through the 12 disciples. Judas had the strength to do what the other 12 didn't by actually eliminating what was standing in the way. And this is completely in line with the Gnostic theme of the evil creator God constantly trying to thwart humanity from realizing itself. You had Christ, who was now preaching a message of understanding yourself as divine. What's going to happen? You're going to use Judas to eliminate Christ and then have the 12 disciples preach a false and twisted doctrine. And so this is the takeaway from the Gospel of Judas, to realize that this was a very virulent attack on what would become mainstream Christianity. And it was a stark warning to those that if you follow this, you will be giving away your divinity and you will be worshiping the devil. So once again, just to be clear, in Hyperianism, we take all these things to be symbolic stories. We don't believe in these things literally, but we can learn from them and understand them. So just to be clear, remember, we aren't Gnostics. We don't take these things literally, but we understand that they're very important stories that we can learn from. And you can see that allegorically, this is an excellent attack and criticism of mainstream Christianity. There's some things in here that aren't good. We don't agree with everything, of course, and we don't take it to be literal. But it's very important because in Hyperianism, we know that we are divine and that we should never give away our power. We should never give away our divinity by power self-projecting. We should never give away our divinity by worshiping some kind of external being, some sort of false idea, but rather realize and actualize our own divinity right now through us so that we can transform ourselves and transform the world. So I hope you enjoyed the Gospel of Judas, extremely important text in its very aggressive attack on mainstream Christianity. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports on Patreon, especially Timothy, Renaissance Fairy, and Jordy. Thank you guys so much. Remember, anyone who supports, you'll get access to my lecture notes for this video and many others, access to our secret weekly live streams, and our hidden Discord server, the Citadel. Patreon is the best way to support my work. The link is right here because of all the deplatforming on Facebook and YouTube and all that. It's the best way. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.